Dear speakers and participants, welcome to the online symposium Beyond Mangunwijaya, Materials and Community in Architecture. My name is Eduard Kögel. I'm one of the initiators and artistic directors of the long-term exchange program Encounters with Southeast Asian Modernism. My colleagues are Sally Belo and Moritz Henning. We are pleased that you are with us today. This online symposium is part of our program Learning from Mangunwijaya, which we are conducting with partners from Indonesia, the Museum Arsitektur Indonesia, and the Universitas Islam Indonesia. Today, speakers from Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, China, Australia, and Germany are taking part. Learning from Mangunwijaya is a follow-up of our common project Tippel Architect, German-trained Indonesian architects from the 1960s, which gave insight into German-Indonesian relations in the field of architecture. We had an exhibition in Jakarta in 2022, organized a symposium and published a book together with the team of Museum Arsitektur Indonesia. This was supported by the German Federal Foreign Office. Now we are preparing an exhibition in Berlin, which is titled Tippel Architect, the Indonesian-German Architecture Story, that will open on 20th November at the Technical University Berlin. During the work on these topics, the Indonesian priest, author, activist, and architect Mangunwijaya, or sometimes also Romo Mangun, who was also included in this exhibition, began to fascinate us in particular. Even in his student days in the German town of Aachen, his commitment extended far beyond architecture. This gave us the idea of delving deeper into Mangunwijaya's work, and we therefore submitted another project application to the German Federal Foreign Office. Once again, they placed their trust in us and our application was approved. For this, we are greatly indebted to the Federal Foreign Office, who made the whole project possible. As we wanted to work in Yogyakarta, the place where Mangunwijaya lived and worked, Setyadi Supandi and Avianti Armand suggested bringing the Universitas Islam Indonesia on board as a local partner for the workshops on site. That was a great idea, as we now know. The whole project consists of a number of modules. These are 5 public online lectures in advance on various aspects of Mangunwijaya's work by renowned experts. A workshop from 21st to 30th July in Yogyakarta with over 50 students and teachers from 6 countries working in 6 groups, including site visits, joint idea development and design, construction of models, and creation of a booklet on some reference buildings. 2 days online symposium, and last but not least, a documentary film about Mangunwijaya's architectural works directed by our Indonesian curatorial partners, which will be presented this fall. You will find all the activities documented on our website. With reference to Mangunwijaya's architectural thinking, the focus of this symposium is on 2 topics that are more relevant today than ever: building for and with the community and material consciousness. Speakers from China, Germany, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand will report on their work on locally and socially oriented architecture between craftsmanship, a commitment to the common good, and the real estate industry. We are happy to share this with all of you. Today, our moderator is Amanda Ahmadi, who is teaching at the Melbourne School of Design. Amanda obtained her doctorate degree in Architecture and Asian Studies at the University of Melbourne in 2007. She is interested in looking at the interactions between architecture and identity politics and how this unfolds in different historical periods. Thank you very much for moderating today. Amanda, now it is your turn.
Thank you, Edward, for very generous introduction. And I, of course, would like to thank all the curatorial team for the opportunity to moderate this really fascinating symposium, an exploration of a topic that is very close to my heart, and certainly to kind of revisit the core ideas and the core agenda embedded in the work of Mangunwijaya. I recall myself as a student of architecture some decades ago where I studied with limited access to books, but I do have the two books that he wrote in relation to architecture. And I think I'm sure everyone already read a topic of the 5 topics we will be learning today from our 5 fascinating speakers. And I think what is unique about this symposium is how this topic, building for and with community and material consciousness, are going to be explored through the experience across the world, showcasing experience from different parts of Asia and Europe, kind of reflecting on a condition emerging in both the global north and the global south. I think this is an important forum that link places and highlight shared interests and shared concern of what architecture can do today, and particularly in relation with community engagement and material consciousness. So I would like to go through quickly some housekeeping. I would like to ensure everyone to mute their microphone while the speakers are presenting their work. And as you know, this session is recorded and it will be made available online in the near future. And we will have 5 speakers presenting their work, one after another. And we will have a discussion session at the end. I would like to welcome you to write your questions as we go through the 5 session. You can post it in the chat section, and we will aim to accommodate as many questions we can within the allocated time. And I would like to ask for your understanding if we are not able to cover all the questions at the end. Okay, so we will start with the first presentation from Mahatmanto. His presentation, the title is Tectonics in YB Mangunwijaya's Architecture. Mahatmanto is a lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture and Design, University Kristen Dutawacana in Yogyakarta, Central Java. He studied architecture at Bandung Institute of Technology. He is particularly interested in the study of the traces of colonial architectural thought and work in contemporary architectural practice. And Mahatmanto will present in English, but in some cases he might need my help to translate his thought in English. So I might jump in to assist Mahatmanto through the presentation. I would like now to invite Banto to share your screen.
I was asked to present a topic that is closely related to Mangunwijaya, the tectonics of Mangunwijaya. People, this is no topic indeed. However, this topic is still relevant and has evolved into a lively discourse among architects and architectural sending programs in the present day. Before delving into Mangunwijaya tectonics, allow me to clarify my relation with Romo Mangun. I'm not too close with Romo Mangun. There is one important figure between me and Romo Mangun, Pak Eko Prawoto. So this is a ya semacam presentasi mengenai hubungan saya, Romangun, dan Pak Eko. Actually, my relationship with Romangun is not particularly intimate. I know, yeah, among our friends here in this symposium, closer than myself to Romangun. However, I am grateful for this discussion. Pak Eko, my colleague at the Tawacana, introduced me to Romangun, and as we know, Romangun rarely publishes his thoughts, but through Pak Eko, I was able to get more or less accurate understanding about Romangun and his work. Given my distance from Romangun, I choose to discuss Romangun's work. Talking about the tectonics of Mangunwijaya, I remember the first time this topic beginning as a course. Mangunwijaya tectonics discourse emerged after the Mangunwijaya tectonic exhibition about September 1999 at the Art House. The exhibition, the emergence of the discourse were originally due from the internal needs at architecture department in Yogyakarta for a curriculum orientation rooted in our local. In the 1960s and 90s, 80 and 90, there were still many craftsmen available around Yogyakarta to use as a place to learn. At the time, Romangun was at the peak of his popularity. We know he had the same view, namely an appreciation for the art of building or pavement. I need your permission to say in bahasa Indonesia. Ini adalah bagian dari pameran kami yang memperlihatkan bagaimana Romo Mangun mengolah massa pada bangunan-bangunannya.
This slide show how Mangunwijaya used massing as a response to the site.
Demikian pula kami juga mempelajari bagaimana pertemuan-pertemuan dilakukan antara lantai dengan dinding yang sebenarnya mengembangkan apa yang ada di dalam ketukangan tradisional di lokal kami.
In this particular image, the team studied how the floor and the wall connect and join, and in fact, in that particular connection, this is really reinvention of local craftsmanship.
Kami juga belajar bagaimana ini semua foto-foto ini kami sajikan di dalam pameran itu karena kami menganggap bahwa hal inilah yang penting dari karya-karya Romo Mangun, yaitu koneksi-koneksi atau join atau temuan-pertemuan.
The exhibition that Mahatmanto and team organized specifically showcase this detailing of connecting points, because this is where Mangunwijaya offer quite a genuine new design resolution, where he explore local craftsmanship and reinvent that to resolve that particular design problematics.
Karena keterbatasan bahan, karena keterbatasan material, maka bangunan-bangunan ini harus disambung, harus dihubungkan, sehingga dengan demikian kita mempunyai suatu massa yang jamak, yang multiple. Tidak bisa sebuah bangunan besar yang solid dan satu.
Because the design have to deal with a series of limitation in terms of the dimension of the raw materials and the site, the whole volume was typically broken down into multiple parts. So rarely you see in the work of Mangunwijaya a large volume. It tends to his work tends to consist of a series of interconnected parts.
Demikian pula bagaimana lantai, dinding, dan kolom itu harus ditemukan. Ada sebuah masalah, selalu ada masalah bagaimana menyiasati, mengakali, kalau bahan itu terbatas, bahan itu tidak seperti yang ada yang bisa didapatkan. Maka muncullah suatu sambungan-sambungan yang harus dimanfaatkan dari bahan-bahan yang ada.
So in almost all aspect of the work, it's always dealing with constraints, whether in terms of the type of materiality, availability, or dimensionality. So it is constantly a problem-solving process, and so in the way that the building consists of a myriad of experimentation and proposition of how those problems can be resolved with the whole process, constraint that they have to deal with.
Ya, ini adalah salah satu yang menarik dari perjumpaan antar bahan itu, mempertemukan antara kolom dan balok yang berlapis. Ini suatu inovasi yang mungkin belum dijumpai dalam arsitektur tradisional, tetapi dicoba menggunakan bahan yang baru, dan ini saya kira pantas untuk dipelajari lagi.
What is also unique in Mangunwijaya work is this experimentation of mixed materiality and structural capacity. So in this particular slide, he experimented combining, timber craftsmanship with, concrete and other type of structural system. So this is again very unique to try to resolve it genuinely as a kind of a cohesive entity.
Ini dalam pandangan yang lebih luas, bagaimana memanfaatkan sebenarnya suatu konsep lama, tetapi diberi bentuk secara baru, sehingga pertemuan kolom dan balok ini menjadi lebih elaborated.
Yeah, again, you can see in this image is the rearticulation of how the columns meet the beam, and then he really spent a lot of time to come up with a strong architectural solution, and it's not a new typology, but he is experimenting with different type of materiality and joint finishing.
Bagaimana orang membangun bekerja, ini saya mendapatkan dari arsip. Dia memberi instruksi kepada tukang secara langsung, karena hubungan antara arsitek dan tukang rupanya dekat. Ini berbeda sekali ketika saya sebelumnya bekerja di Jakarta. Ini saya tidak mempunyai hubungan yang sedemikian dekat dengan tukang. Tapi ketika saya bekerja di Jogja, saya mendapatkan kenyataan bahwa hubungan antara arsitek dan tukang itu amat dekat. Gambar-gambar ini memperlihatkan bagaimana instruksi seorang arsitek diberikan kepada tukang dengan cara yang mudah dan gampang diterima.
Yeah. So in this series of sketches and notes produced by Mangunwijaya, we can see the intensity of communication between him as an architect and the traders tukang in Indonesian or builders in English or tradies in Australian lingo. And you can see this imposed a specific challenge. He has to be able to communicate to such a detail in order to realize his idea of a new type of joinery, a new type of combining different materialities.
Ya, kembali kepada masalah bahan. Mangun menggunakan bahan yang ada, yang terbatas, lalu bagaimana dia menyusunnya agar menjadi nampak indah. Ini suatu sikap ya, karena memang tidak bisa tidak, sudah kepepet sehingga harus membuat suatu cara perhubungan bahan yang seindah mungkin, tapi benar.
Yeah, again, in this particular slide, showcase how even within the constraint of availabilities of specific materialities, he's able to come up with a resolution. So he worked with what is available, and that's why he's willing to experiment combining materialities and but yet somehow arrive at kind of a cohesive resolution.
Baik, lalu bagaimana dengan sesudah Mangun itu meninggalkan kita? Bagaimana diskurs mengenai tektonika ini dikembangkan sesudah Mangun?
So in this next couple of slides, Mahatmanto will share with us what happened following after the passing of Mangunwijaya. He passed away in the 1990s, late 1990s, and he's kind of showing how the community, the craftsmanship, people with knowledge of specific technologies continue to try to kind of sustain, his approach in designing and working with, the strong sense of tectonics.
Apa yang terjadi sesudah Mangun tidak ada dan bagaimana hal ini tektonika Mangunwijaya itu berkembang? Ada beberapa hal. Yang pertama, ada beberapa universitas yang meneruskan dengan memberi kuliah tentang tektonika. Yang kedua, untuk di lingkungan kami, ada alumni yang menjadi artis dan kemudian meneruskan kesenangannya di dalam menggarap bahan. Dan juga dengan demikian kita mempunyai sebuah komunitas yang bisa diajak kerjasama. Dan yang terakhir, kami menyelenggarakan semacam forum diskusi yang diberi nama Desa Bercerita.
Okay, I think Pak Anto mungkin bisa kembali ke slide sebelumnya. Just want to show.
Slide sebelumnya.
Yeah.
Okay, I suppose you can read on this slide just to kind of highlight that local university in Yogyakarta, in particular, in Duta Wacana, we have also Gajah Mada University and Universitas Islam Indonesia, run specific course focusing on tectonics. There's a number of elective course every second semester. The alumni of Yogyakarta-based School of Architecture are known to have a strong interest in exploring architectural tectonics, working and experimenting with materialities, locally produced materiality. And there is a number of cooperation with other institutions focusing on interpreting and reinventing vernacular architecture and local craftsmanship. And specifically, they create a series of discussion called Desa Bercerita, means storytelling from the village.
Ini kerjasama kami dengan arsitek Andi Rahman yang mengajak mahasiswa untuk mengenal bahan secara dekat.
For example, that was the collaboration with an architect, Andi Rahman. Really an in-situ and one-to-one experimentation with specific building materials.
Bisa bercerita adalah suatu forum yang secara teratur membuat diskusi mengenai kerajinan atau keterampilan yang ada di desa-desa agar itu bisa dicari kemungkinannya untuk dipelajari para arsitek dan para tukang. Dan ini ini berlangsung di
2 menit lagi Pak Mahatmanto ya.
Baik. Kemudian ada macam-macam seperti pottery, membuat wayang. Sebenarnya ide-ide ini semuanya berasal dari pembacaan kami atas pemikiran Gottfried Semper, Stiller. Lalu kami mengembangkannya untuk para tukang di desa-desa kami.
Yep. So the activities is obviously also inspired by other writings on vernacular architecture. This is a constant kind of exploration of broader engagement with tectonics in dealing with local craftsmanship.
Ada 2 alumni, yang pertama tadi Yudi Kusworo, mungkin sudah presentasi pada bulan Juni yang lalu. Ada lagi Novi yang sekarang menjadi artis dan dia bergaul dengan bambu, lalu dia menjadi artis yang berspesialisasi pada pengolahan bambu.
This is another example of a continuation of Mangunwijaya's exploration, as explored by Novi Kristianawati, who is now a very active installation artist. Masih ada 1 menit, Pak.
Apa yang dapat kita pelajari? Bahwa apa yang saya sampaikan tadi mau mengatakan mengenai muncul dan berkembangnya diskurs tentang tektonik dari Mangunwijaya. Semula pemunculan itu hanya karena kebutuhan internal saja, tapi kemudian karena dipublikasikan dia menjadi meluas dan diterima oleh publik. Sayangnya apa yang dia kembangkan, apa yang kembangkan dengan tektonik itu tidak bisa atau dengan cepat terima oleh para tukang, orang-orang yang dibelanya. Sebaliknya yang paling menerima dengan cepat ini adalah kaum akademisi. Oleh sebab itu maka diperlukan kerjasama antara akademisi dan para tukang supaya diskursus mengenai tektonika ini menjadi maju dan tetap hidup. Saya harap pada masa yang datang ini akan lebih berkembang.
Okay, I guess you can read the slides here, but the key point is the publication exhibition of Mangunwijaya's work following his passing certainly helped disseminate his ideas and his approach, his design methods. But essentially, there needs to be a strong commitment among the academics to sustain this and promote this, because there is a detachment with local craftsmanship among the traders, the builders themselves. So that it remains to be seen, and it really depends on involvement of educational institution in collaboration with practitioners to sustain this commitment to work with and reinvent local craftsmanship. Oke.
Baik, terima kasih. Saya kira saya sudah sampaikan apa yang harus saya sampaikan. Terima kasih, Amanda.
Terima kasih Pak Anto. Thank you Pak Mahatmanto. We are now transitioning to our second speakers. So if I may invite Ranon to share your screen.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna share my screen.
Yes. So the second presentation from Ranon is titled Modern Vernacular Architecture with Local Materials. And I would like to introduce Ranon Chotkamolpong from Yangnar Studio of Thailand. Ranon Chotkamolpong studied architecture at the Faculty of Architecture of King Mongkut's Institute of Technology, Lat Krabang. Since 2022, he is working as a project architect at Yangnar Studio, Chiang Mai. Yangnar Studio has received a number of awards, including the Ban Lai Suan Award and the ASA Architectural Design Award by the Association of Siamese Architects under royal patronage. Welcome, Ranon.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. And I'm Ranon. And yeah, I'm an architect here and also a speak person for Yangna Studio. And this is our studio, our office here. And yeah, we were based in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. Our studio was established in 2011. And yeah, we are working as a small firm here. And our team, we consist of both architects and also the craftsmen, and which we share the common interest in both designing and construction, and we specialize in woodwork, and we study about and integrate our knowledge and experience from vernacular architecture, and so we work with local materials and also the craftsmanship to the specific area of the site where we work. So we are creating the comfortable space for our clients, but it would have to fit the modern context too. And yeah, we passionate about learning through traveling through different area. Like in this picture, it's in Nan province of Thailand, in northern Thailand. It's a salt delivery route in the ancient time. And we visit local village to study their wisdom and also their skills, their techniques as our inspiration. And yeah, we go both in Thailand or any other area in like mostly Southeast Asia as well. And yeah, and our goal is like we want to preserve and pass on this knowledge to the other people. We want to highlight the importance of local craftsmanship to the larger scale of audience from us. And also we want to emphasize the importance of sustainable design to our work, as well as we are immersing ourselves to nature. And yeah, in our work, that's why we care a lot about the nature, about the site context, about the environment so much. It's like visiting the site is a must that we always do for every of our projects. So our design team can know the location and can do all the analysis, because for the adaptive vernacular in modern context, uh, it still need to fit the local context or local site. So all the physical features of the site, like the wind and sun, the access or the water flow or the contour, the vegetation or the soil type, all these things are important. So we must know them, and so it can help us bring the essence of the nature into our work for the clients through our design projects. Yeah, and for most of our work, we mostly focus on like residential or the small commercial projects, or the small scale architecture like an exhibition or installation. And most of our project based in local materials, and mostly based in all area across Thailand. And yeah, and today we would like to share our methodologies about and our projects through our two works, which is Ban Ing Suk and King Amajiki Coffee Roaster. Yeah, and yeah, this is the first project we would like to bring it to you. Ban, it means a house in Thai language. And yeah, it's an eco-stay accommodation in Opkhan National Park in Chiang Mai, in northern Thailand. And it's surrounded by the mountains and forests with an area of 50 square meters. So yeah, because of the site that it's embraced by the mountains, so it's naturally cool and a bit humid throughout the year. So this house going to be designed for the mainly on passive ventilation without any air conditioning, and we want it to allow the wind to flow freely while providing all the outdoor and semi-outdoor space for all the relaxation activities and for the connection to the nature. Yeah, and this house is a result of we synthesizing all the experience and inspiration we gathered from the trip that we went to Lahu or Musa Hill Tribe Village in this one is in Shan state of Myanmar. And the main element that we bring to this project is the compact soil lift landscape under the raised wooden house, like in this picture. So this can be used as a multi-purpose outdoor activities area, and this area, and also this design helps us avoiding the ground humidity that come up, and it also allows the wind to flow freely under the house to ventilate the air and the temperature to keep it cool. And so the materials in this project, we focus on using the local resources. So because we want to minimize the transportation carbon emission. So mostly of them is wood, the reused wood that we source from the demolished house in Chiang Mai. And also the other wooden elements like the recycled wood, like we use doors or windows because it can reduce the cost. It's cheaper and it requires much less preparation process for the wood. And then we can select the more various type of wood for different function. And also like about termite is a big problem in Thailand when we working with wood. So the old wood it is less attract to the termites because there's less water and nutrition in it. So it's better for choice for the house. And also bamboo is also another key local material we use in this project because it's easily found and very cheap and strong. And we use them without any treatment and bring it into different details like the landscaping, like a fence, or the partition, or other design details like doors or windows. Yeah, and this approach we also inspire from the local village that we visit to, like in this sketch. We adapt their techniques and also their details to fit our design, our functions in Thailand. Even it's different context, but it's similar, so we borrow some of them too. And it's our senior sketch. And also other materials, which is local materials include like the cement block brick, cement roofing, or the reclaimed steel pipe that we use for the standalone column or other detailed joint, or some of the other site-specific materials like a wooden log or a stone, any material nearby. So with our design improvisation and combining with our skill craftsmen, we are able to create something like a more site-specific elements, more like art and architecture to fit our functions. For this one, for example, is a wooden log that we found nearby the site.
நிகழ்ச்சியை உயிரோடு அளிக்க உலகின் அனைத்து தொலைக்காட்சி
Yeah, and for this example, it's a wooden log that we found nearby the site, and it's what's turned into the stair. Because this one we was inspired from our Vietnamese vernacular architecture that we visit, and the log was ensured to the stone by the steel bolt joint, and also the reused steel pipe. Yeah, like this one, it's a wooden locks there, inspired from our trip to Vietnam, from their vernacular architecture. Yeah, and this lock, we use the traditional tools by our craftsmen to carve it, make it into the stair and connect to the stone base by the steel bolt joint. And we also use the recycled steel uh, pipe as the railing. Yeah, and this house is a house, but it's also like our experimental work too, that we are working with local materials and also like craftsmanship and sustainability. We try to blend the craftsmanship and to suit the residential needs. And like we deeply hope that this project can help a little bit to raise the awareness of the value about the recycled materials and also about the eco-friendly process to the architecture in the future too. Yeah. And yeah, we would like to share another of our projects, this one, which is called Jingamajiki Coffee Roaster. It's a cafe and it's based in Marin district in Chiang Mai. It's located beside the paddy field and with a sweeping views of mountains nearby. Yeah, and the site is a long and narrow plot of land. So this is by the layout and form the architecture based on the site's potential and combining that to our craftsman skills too. Yeah, this one is another inspirational project too that came from our traveling. This one is from Ban Talgon village in also in Shan state of Myanmar as well. And the main design elements that we adapt into this project is the rice barn we found in the village. Yeah, the rice barn floor is elevated and the area below they use for animals or storage. And for the upper floor they use for rice storage. And the special thing about this is that their wall structure, which is a wooden frame, they put it outside to resist the rice pressure that push outside because they store the rice inside. So it's our inspiration, and we try to adapt this concept to our exterior design so that we want to show and expose the structure as an ornamental purpose for our elevation. And also, it's good because we can keep the interior walls to be smooth, so it's easier to clean. Yeah, and this is the side of the project. It's the long shape side and of other conditions like a view or the surrounding like an access or the canals nearby. They all have an impact to our architectural forming, like an orientation and the space that happen. So the building layout, we try to emphasize the outdoor spaces. So the buildings, they are positioned at the service area like an uh, bathroom or the kitchen. They face to the west to receive the sunlight and the wind to keep them clean, dry, because we try to use the passive ventilation. That yeah, and we try to keep them compact. So because of that, this leaves the long open area in the middle for the temporary bamboo pavilion, so that our customer they can enjoy the surrounding the site throughout the day. They are open on the daytime, and this area, this space, it also reflects the owner vision too, because the owner he want to create like a shaded outdoor space to enjoy the mountain view, but he just plant the plant. So most of them are still small and young. Yeah, like showing in this vegetation master plan. The so that the lifetime of the temporary bamboo pavilion, this one the owner he's waiting for newly plant to grow, so the timeline would be around 3 to 5 years. By that, we are using the bamboo without any treatment, so it will last about for several years, which is perfectly for our timeline. So when the bamboo structure are gone, the tree shades will perfectly cover all the area we want them to be. Yeah, so the bamboo, they provide like an temporary and sustainable and also cheap. So it's perfect for our shelter requirements. in this time frame. So we source the bamboo from the local area in Merim district, and we try to use various type of bamboo, different species. They come with different length and size in diameters, and also the color for different structural functions. And we don't do any chemical treatments to avoid destroying all the site or the surrounding, even though it's just little bit. Yeah, and we want the bamboo to preserve their natural texture, the color, and the aesthetics as the bamboo. And yeah, also in this project, this is our local craftsmen, which include the ethnic groups in Thailand, in northern Thailand, and also other zone near Thailand, this as well, like Laos or Myanmar. Yeah, they include like Pakakayo and Lisu group in northern Thailand. They work on this project and they are expert in bamboo techniques already, like weaving techniques or tying or carving. And the traditional tools are also used to for this one is a flat end knife from the local blacksmith community in Lampang province near our site. And also like other traditional tools like a chisel or a saw. Yeah, we also source from local area because we want the outcome of the architecture to showcase their traditional wisdom through the tools they use. And also in this project, it's also our experiment too about our frame installation techniques, which we have seen in Vietnam. And it's very good for us because it can save our time and the transportation cost and also reduce the carbon emission. Yeah, because of that, we decide to prepare all the structural frame at our studio, and then we use the crane to install them up. And it's very fast. We can install all of this within 1 day. So it's a very good way to save time and money. And yeah, by that, it's not just a cafe, but we believe that it's an architecture that brings the both local materials and local craftsmanship. It can reflect our commitment to preserve and share the vernacular techniques and heritage on a larger scale of audience. And at the same time, we can still concern about the site and the environment. Even though it inspired from the vernacular architecture, but it serves the more modern function, which is the cafe. Many of us like cafe, and by that we can attract a lot of audience like coffee lovers or the visitors or influencer on online media or the normal people who just want to come and visit. Yeah, so that by that they can enjoy the aesthetic of the nature and also the aesthetic of the craftsmanship as well, even though they are not an architect.
3 more minutes, Ranon.
Okay, and by that, to project it illustrate our vision and design approach. We want to concern about the cultural heritage and sustainability, and we want to share it to the new generation as well. Like this picture is our intern students. Yeah, and sometimes we hold a workshop at our studio to share the knowledge, like woodworking with our audience as well. And as well as sometimes we also plant the tree too. We want to work on it both on the back and on the front of our house in our process. And yeah, it's not just happen overnight, but we believe it's possible, and we hope that we can inspire some others more. And yeah, that's our role as Yangna Studio architects. And yeah, thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much, Ranon. And I think we are very good with time, and it's just amazing stories that you tell. I mean, like it's taking us through different part of Southeast Asia. So I think we've learned about perhaps many tradition that has not been documented before. So it is as if that your work, your practice work, is a form of documentation of those places. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions later on from the audience. Great, and I will now invite Shu Tian Tian, our third presenter. Hi, Tian Tian. So Tian Tian's presentation is titled Fujian Tulo Adaptive Reuse, and if you can share your slide. Xu Tian Tian received her Master of Architecture in Urban Design from Harvard Graduate School of Design and her bachelor's degree in architecture from Tsinghua University in Beijing. Since opening her practice in Beijing in 2004, Xu has received numerous awards, such as the WA China Architecture Award in 2006 and 2008, the Architectural League New York's Young Architects Awards in 2008, the Design Vanguard Award in 2009 by Architecture Record, the Moira Gemmill Prize for Emerging Architects in 2019, and the International Prize of Sustainable Architecture in 2021. In 2020, she was appointed an honorary fellow of the American Institute of Architects. In 2022, she became the recipient of Swiss Architectural Award. Xu Tiantian's groundbreaking architectural acupuncture is a holistic approach to the social and economic revitalization of rural China and has been selected by the UN Habitat as the case study of inspiring practice on urban-rural linkage. Welcome, Tian Tian.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm really honored to participate with this forum of learning from Mangunwijaya. I would like to introduce one of our projects, Fujian Tulo Adaptive Reuse, just to continue the discussion on modernity and vernacular. So first of all, I wonder if all of you will recognize this vernacular typology, which is located in southeast part of in the mountainous region in Fujian, in China. So this is very special building typology and large scale, made by this large scale ram earth walls and timber structure inside. We probably know about the Tulo from the UNESCO Tulo. 46 Tulo buildings were inscribed in year 2008 as the World Cultural Heritage. But you have to know that this is not just the number of 46, but actually it's very common typology in the region, in Fujian province, and there are still thousands of Tulo buildings within this region. So Tulo was first built, this large scale of fortress was built as a defense structure for the communities to fight together on common enemies or invasions. So the building tectonics, especially with this circular ram earth protective walls, you can read from these drawings, from these or photos, understanding, each Tulo building only have one access on the ground level and no windows, and the openings on the walls would eventually expand, become larger only on the top levels, but it's also for the defense purpose. And then the corridor at the back of our rooms, on the top level, is only designed for defense function. So it's been about hundreds of years in this region that this typology is adopted by the local residents in order to fight together. But first of all, they needed to live together. So Tulo, it has these dual functionalities for co-defense, but also as collective living. So this protective ram earth walls very often goes to 4 to 5 stories tall, actually protect the communal living of timber construction, timber structure within these circular forms or square forms. And each tulo can accommodate up to hundreds of people within one structure. And you would read that this is probably the only vernacular typology that is built, with no hierarchy. All the units are evenly distributed for each family to own one unit. And this is also a kind of a very specific social system under extreme condition that people needed to fight together. So it's a structure built for survival. And with the hundreds of years of history in this region, social, political, also ecological background, the local community eventually cultivated their own tradition, history, and also heritage and legacy. So in general, there are two types of tulo buildings. One is for Hakka people, and they would share, normally every unit is, a row house from the ground level as the kitchen. Second story is always the storage, and then the upper floors are the bedrooms. But all these families, they share the common staircases. So basically you have to go through, the common stair and then the corridors in front of your neighbor's bedrooms in order to reach to your own bedroom. So, but this is really a very intimate community, within the Hakka community. They really live together, and it's also a very fascinating, sharing, distributing system within this, the Hakka Tulo community, that if the young people are out of the Tulo on the farmland for labor work at the agricultural field, the elders within this Tulo would help to look after, the young children. So it's really building up a very specific social system within the Hakka communities. And there's also another typology, slightly different for local Minnan people, which has more individualities that you could read from the drawings that you enter to the Tulo building. First of all, it's a defense structure, and you enter to the common central courtyard. But then every family has its own secondary entrance, and they're independent or internal staircases for circulation. And very often all these units have their internal courtyards. So this is for Minnan people, which is also a Tulo system for defense and for collective living, but less intimate compared to the Hakka community. So all of these Tulo buildings have very similar systematic construction method, with the ram earth very often very thick at the bottom, about 2 meters, and then maybe gradually, reduced to 1 meter at the top. But it's functioning not as protection, but also as a structural wall or element when integrating with a timber structure. And you can see that the construction is really story by story, with timber structure integrated together with this very thick, massive ram earth walls. And all the material were from local, ram earth or timber from the mountain, from the land. And every Tulo is built by all these people, families or the community together. It's common, it's a collective labor work in terms of construction. But then the current condition with the Tulo is that since the economic development in at least 3 decades, since at least three decades ago, many more and more of the local residents started to move out of their own, the Tulo buildings and build their own single-family houses. It was also by economic and by the land policy a few decades ago. So and eventually the Tulo buildings, they eventually lose the original functionalities as, defense or communal living. So many of the Tulo become vacant, abandoned, and was in a critical condition. I mean, after a few decades, actually a lot of the Tulo buildings have already disappeared, collapsed and disappeared, demolished. So we do consider this as a social architectural urgency, and we brought up a proposal to, Tulo is not just the physical, tangible building material of local ecological resource, but Tulo itself, with the cultural, social, very specific cultural, social legacy, tradition. You could read Tulo buildings, thousands of this type of vernacular buildings as the local material, local social material, local cultural material, and also local resource. So we made a proposal to bring to the local authorities to argue that ruin can be considered as new plot typology. So instead of just keep the Tulo buildings abandoned, we can reuse these Tulo buildings, but without repairing or rebuilding all of the Tulo into original conditions. So we were together working with the local, with the Zhangzhou city, taking 3 counties from Nanjing, Hua'an, and Pinghe, taking 7 buildings as different kind of typology, looking into different ruin conditions. So, this actually is not to look as specific to law and to convert it into a one-of-a-kind building, but actually more taking this abandoned Tulo as a social, cultural material and resource, and to provide a social strategy. So, for example, like this Tulo was abandoned for 30 years by now, and the building collapsed at the entrance, which really opened up this big hall at the entrance. So this becomes an opportunity to, instead of rebuilding everything, we can actually take this, the void as and transform into lookout terraces. So for most of the Tulo buildings, are very well protected by these ram earth walls. With this chiffon Tulo, the lookout terrace really become its new addition or a new identity that really brings, landscape and air circulation into the Tulo buildings. But of course, with all these abandoned structure, the argument is that this type of building techniques, with the assembly timber, tenon and mortise timber construction, it's easy to readjust the internal space organization. So even though these buildings might not, might not work as, original with its original functions, but all these large structures, with the flexibility of its structure and construction, can still be transformed into community space or for cultural public programs and activities. But then each Tulo will be introduced with very specific program, public or communal program based on the village context and heritage. For example, this Tulo buildings, Bingyanglo, with already a big part of the building has collapsed, and with the trees eventually taking over, vegetation taking over the void space, this will be converted into a memorial and also a reading study areas space for Lin Yutang, who is very well-known scholar, writer from this region, but is really known by global Chinese people. So, and then well, for this project, we didn't need to, rebuild anything, all this collapsed part. But really, with the trees, vegetation taking over these collapsed or void space, there's already a new typology of garden, of terrace emerging. So this becomes, like a new outdoor garden courtyard or additional layer of courtyard, and new gardens with terrace for seating, for gallerying. And with another Shenping Tulou in the region, we were also looking into the potential of working with a new type of modern materials such as COT, timber structure, as a continuation of the vernacular language, but which can generate a larger scale of public space to accommodate all public gatherings. So the argument is that Ruin can really become the new opportunity to introduce, new level of typology into this vernacular Tulou buildings as a social, ecological, and economic strategy. With this type of minimal intervention, design intervention, actually it requires much less funding than repairing all of these Tulous only as restoration strategy. And I want to go briefly about this Tsuimei Tulou, which still has a few number of original inhabitants. So this was the original condition, and you can see that some the Tulou still have some residents, but many of the units are vacant or abandoned. So we carefully went through all these the space occupancy, like which part, the brown part is still occupied by the original residents, and the orange part would be the new the void space that will be transformed into community space or public space for not only for residents, but also for the villagers and visitors. So with this minimal design intervention, we after the discussion with all the communities, residents, that we finally reached to agreement on the not to intervene with their individual household rooms, family rooms, but only to work on the ground level, expanded the kitchen space. Usually was within, normally was within the room, but then this enlarged outdoor cooking space can reduce the fire risks. At the same time, it really provide, a additional layer of living space, living area, but also face to the visitors. So these spaces could really become, a space, a economic space for, when the local residents can still sell, their food product, and then for the visitors. So they, the local residents within the Tulou are more into potential, economic or revenue growth, or that can really bring economic benefits to the residents and to the community. And the rest of the void space, unoccupied or abandoned space, we also work carefully with the existing structure by providing a certain number of the space into a communal space or just a public space for both the villagers and also for the visitors. So this will allow, visitors coming to the Tulou to not only to stay on the ground level, to visit, the food stands, but also can go to the upstairs with the different floors to experience, the kind of living and also the landscape within the Tulou building. So these are some of the
3 more minutes, Tiantian, 3 more minutes.
Thank you. These are some of the drawings. and the integration of timber and structure and ram earth will really provide this kind of a flexibility. And it also allows the construction to go on simultaneously with people living inside, working by only the void space or on without relocating the residents. And the local Tulo community are very used to this type of construction because it's really the typology, when one unit is occupied, the family would, work on the construction while the neighbors are in their daily living conditions. So this is actually the final results. You see the extended, kitchen part really facing the central courtyard to attract visitors there. So these kitchen can also become the food stands. And you also get to see, neighbors cooking, and this is a sharing space as well. And the upper floor, the voids become open space for visitors, also for the residents as well. And the gallery, this corridor becomes a kind of extended gallery for the local life and living. And the community really take the central courtyard as their gathering space for, celebration, for festivals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tian Tian, for that really inspiring presentation. And I'm just mindful that you need to leave in 10 minutes. And I would like the fact that we are good with time. We have a bit of 10 minutes. I do want to use an opportunity to facilitate conversation about your presentation. And I know that the other speaker might want to kind of respond to your topic, and I might invite first Johannes Widodo, our last speakers, who, for me, given your statement earlier to propose ruin as a new typology, I think it's very crucial because, instead of accepting to the current approach of returning the building to the origin, ruin is in fact traces of time, what makes those building kind of traceable to, that's the condition that the structure is in. And I think to react to the void, to parts that is no longer there, those missing parts is part of the history of the building. But Johannes Widodo, if
Yes.
you would like to respond.
Tian, thank you so much. It's really beautiful. I was in Yongting last June, and I visited several typologies in the Hokkien, Southern Fujian, and even I traveled to Tapu, to Meishan in the last the weeks of June. But I saw is, yes, there's a lot of ruins everywhere. So it's not every tulo is intact. In fact, only those tulos that is reserved for tourists, as a show, that's meticulously restored. And one or two maybe turned into a hotel or homestay. So I'm just wondering if your approach, like this idea of modernizing things or upgrading the tulos, as I said, right? Is it really for the locals or is it for the tourists? And how the local accept this?
First of all, it's for the local people. I think every tulo, even though that has been abandoned, every tulo carries the collective memory of the history, the legacy of each community. And you can understand, well, the situation varies case by case, but for some tulo buildings, even though they become vacant, but their offsprings are really preserving the buildings very well, by respect to the ancestors, or this is the building belonging to the family clan. But things varies with the different communities. But then we want to really to restore this collective memory that each Tulo buildings, they carries, the legacy. But then on the other hand, you also want to argue that, Tulo buildings, you can consider that as most ecological building structures. And with the proper maintenance by the residents, the most ancient Tulo building is 700 years by now, with a timber structure, with the rim earth walls. So it's really fascinating, building techniques, which you could also consider this is as intangible cultural heritage. Local people understand the construction method and also passing these techniques by generations. So with this kind of a construction going on, we can also educate like young villagers on how to restore the local Tulo typology. And I think the most important argument is that we want to say that Tulo building can still be performative, in the contemporary context by introducing communal or public programs. But that each one is tailored, really based on the village history context. So these buildings can still be used by the local communities, but at the same time, also looking into ruin as the new typology, it brings kind of a different dynamics to each Tulo buildings, each abandoned, ruined Tulo buildings. So, and with all these large, new addition of new courtyard, gardens, or terraces. So then Tulo can really become, each Tulo stands out with its own identity, which belongs to the history of every specific village.
Thank you. I'm glad you say that because I think it's a very important lesson, especially for the contemporary architecture practice and also for the academics, that we are not talking about the past, right? But we are moving forward. And while moving forward, we never forget about what craft that we have from the past. And I think with your project, you demonstrate really the spirit of Asian modernizations. So I'm also echoing what the Chairman Xi Jinping said about, yes, we can be modernized, but have to come back to your roots, right? The rootedness is important, and it being the Hakka settlements. It's not just the Hakka, even the Southern Fukienese as well. That is well manifested in this in this approach. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And I think it's really important that, this is not about condemning some historical building as if those building has a certain origin that exists in the past. In fact, there is the dimension of time embedded in whatever condition the building is in. And I think, we need to start thinking about, authenticity that is also historical. I think what is the origin? When is the origin? And I think adaptive reuse is certainly an emerging field that allow us to, contextualize our thinking and our approach to heritage. So I guess we have 3 minutes, Tian. If you have a quick comment on the first two presentations.
Is that for me?
Yes, just wanting to give you an opportunity before you
yes,
go.
I think it was really remarkable, this is, the whole conference is about, learning from Mangunwijaya as, how he understands, how he understood, Asian context and building techniques, but also I think not only about the material, but also it's the kind of the typology that is very climatic. And also fitting with its social, political background or history. And I would say that, and also, I'm sorry, the second presentation with a very beautiful light structure seems very effortless, but I'm sure there's a lot of articulation into how to use local material, how to build a space that is climatic, that is functional, but also economic. So these are all the issues that we, I think it's within the Asian context. We always try to build with the, for this kind of a building typology for everyday life. It's the building with economic purpose. It's a very important consideration. So then I would say, vernacular, we try to use local material. We try to use to build for economic purpose, build for necessity. I would say it's also extremely modern. It's not vernacular. It's not the counterpart of a modernism. It should really, continue, and we need to look back to our history and to understand there's a fine balance of how people living with a very specific environment, ecosystem. And I think these are the lessons, we, as a modern architect, we always need to explore, and it's endless study, learning journey.
Yeah, great. I mean, that's very
Thank you.
important, not to kind of frame vernacular as somehow an antithesis to modernity. I mean, like it has, it's still pretty much unraveling and providing source of inspiration and knowledge to solve today's problem. Thank you so
Totally.
much, Tian Tian. That is
Thank
really
you.
inspiring and something that we can return to in the final discussion. But thank you so much for joining us today. Now we are transitioning to our fourth speaker. So I would like to invite Kamil Muhammad. And if you can share your slides on the screen. So Kamil's presentation is titled Between the Built and the Social Form. Kamil Muhammad is the director of Jakarta-based architecture practice POOLL, P-P-P-O-O-O-L-L-L. Indonesian understand, but there's a little bit of a comic in that name. Kamil led the architectural effort for the cooperative housing prototype Kampung Susun Kunir 2022 in conjunction with the Jakarta Government Housing Agency. His work has been internationally awarded, such as the Lafarge Holcim Award Asia Pacific in 2017, Museum for Climate Change, Glasgow 2020, and Future Art Prize 2024. Kamil is a co-founder of Architecture Sans Frontier Indonesia and a co-founder of Architecture Anthropology Design Research Unit Rimpang, and an architect researcher with LabTech Apung as part of the South Design Initiative. Prior to returning to Jakarta, Kamil has previously spent significant time in the Middle East, Kuala Lumpur, and Melbourne, and Kamil completed his Master of Architecture at the University of Melbourne. Welcome, Kamil.
Thank you, Mandy. So I hope everyone can hear my voice well. I'll begin my presentation. Okay, so I will not reintroduce myself, but today I want to share with you a housing project that I think titled Kampung Susun Kunir, which is very much linked to the way for the past couple of years we have reflected upon this notion of building as forms and the socials as a form itself. And
sorry, Kamil, can you switch to full screen view of your presentation?
Yeah, this housing project is really personally I found to be a test of trying to understand this transition from a kampung type of kind of typology to a largely more structured kind of housing system in Jakarta. And I want to situate this presentation within the context of eviction in Indonesia, or in Jakarta, to be more specific. But just to very briefly reflect on how it got to this point, when particularly in the way we view housing in Indonesia, and its concern that initially found itself as an inquiry into this hygiene of slums by Willem de Vogel and Tillema for more than 120 years ago, which is older than the age of Indonesia itself. And it eventually grew into much larger debates on the production of public housing in Indonesia. And personally, of particular interest is the way in which design would come into this into the picture. Municipalities prototype different models, looking at different extents of public participation, and how such participations would inform or influence the design outcomes. And over the incoming decades, particularly the 80s and 90s, housing and infrastructural development, such as the Kampung Improvement Program, would set that kind of precedence on public participations. But I think if we also learn from Mangunwijaya, the alternative to this government-mandated kind of participation often sits at a more transgressive side of the practice of architecture. Mangunwijaya's work in Kalichode, for example, it is tightly linked to the advocacy work to the rights of those facing eviction. And eviction becomes a center point of the bane of the existence of many of these kampungs in Indonesia. And so such linkage between housing and eviction is something that I think is quite profound. That's something that we have to look more into. For example, in the past, between the 2015 to 2018, there's the Legal Aid Foundation recorded numerous cases of eviction, and these are the 3 examples of such evictions and their effect to the urban morphology. And you can see that such removal almost always result in the concretization of such places. For example, this Bukit Duri and Kunir, their removal was to make way for a wider street. And almost always kampungs, they tend to occupy such strategic places in the city. With the example of Kunir, they are actually located within the bound of the old town of Kota Tua. Now, the removal of Kunir was quite strategic, was quite considerable. The kampung itself was not a massive settlement, but half of those evicted decided to move elsewhere. The other half decided to stay and mount an effort to reclaim their rights to housing. And this is what the community looked like prior to eviction. And finally, in 2015, they were fully evicted. And these are some of the tents where about 33 families decided to remain and find ways to reclaim their house back. And so in 2017, I was invited to be a part of the group to accompany the community to figure out some ways forward. And what is that way forward? Nobody knew at the time, but the idea of accompanying, of existing, and to work with the community is what we term as pendampingan, which practically means a long-term commitment to assist. And that process is a part of a larger housing rights advocacy over many years. And in 2017 also, it was the turning point as the organized communities linking with about 20 others in Jakarta made a political contract with the incoming governor to halt eviction. And in 2018, there was a temporary shelter that got built for the residents to be able to, I suppose, have a bit of a relief after being displaced for several years, and to have some time to actually mount their arguments to have their rights to housing back. So they had to do 2 things. Immediately after, they have to first create an organizational vehicle in the form of a co-op or a cooperative, which would work as a way to coordinate the spatial, economic, and structures and all these matters with the residents, but also as a way to connect with others outside of the kampungs, but also to be able to reimagine the histories, their future, and what it is to live in Kota Tua. And both of these things became the basis of the architecture that I will share very soon. The process, because we didn't exactly know when we began what to do with what we had then. All the houses have been demolished, so we began by mapping, with trying to map what had remained. But what was interesting was that each of the family did draw their houses before it was demolished, and what was evident in each of these drawings was that the position of the trees, for example, in these trees, you have a mango trees and a guava tree in front of the houses, and they're quite specific, and they quite remember where they were located. And also these drawing methods, which is I guess a combination of plans and elevations, it helped to give us a glimpse of the movement throughout the spaces in their houses and how they relate to the street in front of them. Here's another example of the drawings. None of these drawings were thought on how to do it by the architects who were involved. So a lot of this, I guess, began from this imagination of how such plans would be drawn like. So using those drawings as a basis from which to design what the eventual houses would be like, in one workshop, we paired one architect with 4 families to break down and recompose as to how people live. And everyone came up with these keywords of what people do in a kampung, what people do in a settlement. And we worked with an anthropologist from University of Indonesia in trying to decipher and recompose the activities in a settlement. And the point is to have them act as triggers as to the design and as a way to collaborate intensely through actual points of what to do and how to design in a given site. What was kind of interesting was that we faced some language barriers, specifically in terms of how we measure things. Very easily, the architects would fall into this trap of measuring things based on the industrial measure in metrics, whereas we had to contend with measuring things based on the body limbs, for example, like a length of an arm, a stretch of a hand, and so on. And so through this process, we learned that this configurability of a house was very important to be maintained. And there's this clear distinction that is needed now between the dry areas and the wet areas that were placed in the middle, which eventually became like this basic form of each of the units in their eventual house, the social house. And you would have like this wet area in the middle that would serve as a kitchen, as a shower area, a service, and a foyer in front. And all of this will be connected because what we also learn is that in kampungs, you'd have shops popping up in each of these houses, in many of these houses, and you cannot really predetermine who will sell what, but often enough, they would require some sort of connections to a kitchen or to running water. And we sort of see this also in different apartments that we saw for post-evicted communities. So we thought that would be something that would be relevant. At the same time, as I mentioned, because Kunir actually is in Kota Tua, so there's a lot of there was that necessity to do an archaeological excavation as required by the heritage body. And I think that was something that we tried to instill amongst the architects that were involved in the pendampingan with Kunir, is that a lot of this would have to be done together. Together in the sense that it's not just so much about the digging part of it, but also the documentation, the trying to understand of what it is that we found. And these sort of activities kind of extend the reading of the past beyond the history of Kunir that began in 1979, and to what kind of relations that we would have to the colonial past. And when the digging was carried out, what was found was that the traces of some residents' houses that was evicted, and immediately when this image was found, it was shared through the community's WhatsApp group, and eventually everyone knew whose house it was, like within a very short period of time. We tried to trace where exactly was the unit, Kampung Kunir was in relations to all these maps of Batavia, of Jakarta. And the findings was that you found some of these foundations of old foundations that were deemed by the heritage body to must remain in place. And we decided to not covered it back, and we decided to allow these dug up spaces to become a community spaces, a gallery, so to speak. And it was at a time when there was this back and forth between the heritage body wanting it to be a gallery for the archaeology, but the community wants it to be, hold on, we have our own history, so that we want to have our own historical gallery. And that, but that eventually sort of formed into the fact that the connections between that dug up spaces that became a gallery is very much linked to the main street, and also the ground floor that was opened up to become a more like a commercial kind of spaces for the co-op. So you'd have 4 stories up and then a semi basement for the galleries. And this is what it looks like after it was built in 2022. And that process sort of opened up the possibility of actually using this as a they would call it a base camp for other communities to actually be in, because Kunir and Kampung Aquarium and Kampung Bukit Duri and a few of other kampungs are undergoing this process of getting the tenure back, to have a more secure tenure and to actually have a stronger footing on the politics of planning in Jakarta, so that the entire idea is not so much about the rebuilding of their houses only and the securing of this tenureship, but also of being a part of that planning process. And that needs this acute understanding of how politics work in Jakarta. And so public spaces like this that are now mushrooming in some of these type of new kind of residentials, they're actually providing spaces for activism that would eventually could be a part of the political system in Jakarta. For example, upon the completion of Kunir, several members of the coalition of the urban poor decided to mount and become a part of the elections for the legislators in Jakarta. But the design itself really is about trying to weave through the public spaces and the private spaces within this building. And that sort of reflects the idea of us trying to understand this transition between what was once a largely a set of row houses of just single or 2 stories, and now turns into 4 houses. Of course, this comes at with a set of challenges. For example, you'd have like a more kind of familial relationships within a kampung, especially a kampung like this small of 33 families. And how would you react to the fact that you would have like public would be part of that public spaces and social spaces within the kampungs? And also, how do you deal with the buildings that is a lot more rigid than what it was once like in a kampung? If you have an issue, example, with water, if you have an issue with electricity, like how do you deal with that? And so the design of these buildings in terms of its plumbing systems, of these electricity systems, they're all exposed and they're all located by areas that is within easy reach and within easy visibility, because the idea of continuing having using that co-op that was set up in the beginning of their effort is to continue as a building management. And I think that speaks to the idea that you'd have to have not just the knowledge of how to run these buildings. And of course, that is very important. And that's why the Jakarta government allows that 1 year period of maintaining that kind of relationships to teach the residents here on how to maintain these buildings. But also that duration of time allows us to build that trust that was once broken because of the eviction. And so a lot of these efforts,
Kamil.
sure. So a lot of these efforts that were done here was not just about the building of the house, but also about relinking these relationships that once existed between the kampungs and the government, the kampungs and the heritage body, with the housing agencies, with the institutions, so with all these people, and use this as a way to make it even more active in their relationships. And these are some images where the buildings are. These were images from 2 years ago, where the old times you would have like this reading of the Qurans every Friday would be on the street, but now they're doing it in the corridor, and they would do it in every levels for each different Fridays. And how do you do this security? Because there used to be like completely social, people would walk around, and now with having CCTVs around, you'd have like different kind of adaptations of what to do with the buildings. Now, I want to just I guess end with this note that nearly 80% of all dwellings in Indonesia are self-built. The transitions from such landed houses in kampungs to this type of houses, I think I see there's a bit of a push towards that, and but we're still left with so many questions that is very much socio-cultural. For example, it's like what to do with inheritance, what to do with the sense of ownership and the groundedness to the land. So a lot of this work is very much not about having a final solution to a design problem, but really a steps towards something that's more comprehensive that could inform policymakers in the future. And I hope that would be the point of this. And here's a picture with Kunir residents, the leader of the co-ops, then with the housing agency heads, finally on the day where Kunir was actually where they signed contracts to be able to manage their own buildings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kamil. Thank you for sharing with us this long journey and process, and it's I'm sure this is very challenging, but also I think the core of it is that ongoing relation and exchange with the community or across multiple years. And I think those articulation of their sense of agency, understanding the space of the kampung, connection to the ground, it's is really a challenging spatial condition to retain in a way, because that's the social aspect of that particular typology. I'm sure there'll be many questions for your presentation, but now I would like to welcome our fourth presenter, Jörg Finkbeiner. And if you can share your screen. So let me introduce our next presenter. Jörg Finkbeiner is a graduate architect, trained as a carpenter and studied architecture at the Technical University of Berlin. Since 2006, he has been one of the managing directors of Partner und Partner Architekten. The office specializes in timber construction and sustainable building according to cradle to cradle, C2C. It also deals with future issues in the building sector as part of various research projects. Jörg Finkbeiner has been a cradle-to-cradle consultant since 2011, and he was also a lecturer and research assistant at TU Berlin, taught sustainable design at Detmold University of Applied Science until 2017 as part of a deputy professorship. He is active as a speaker at events on timber construction and circular construction throughout Germany. Partner und Partner is one of the 3 finalists for the German Sustainable Award Company. His presentation is titled Wood Scraper Timber High-Rises Based on the Cradle-to-Cradle Principle. Welcome, Jörg.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Actually, I feel pretty honored being part of this, just looking at the last presentations and this wonderful, inspiring project we have already seen. And you just mentioned that my presentation is about a timber high-rise according to the circular construction principles. But I thought it would be good to build a bridge from why we end up in this high-rise topic, because the mindset is, I think, in this case, pretty important. And I think it matches very good to what we have already seen. My partner and me, we come from the Black Forest. This is you can see it here. Black Forest is an expression from the Romans, actually, when they came in ancient times over the Rhine. They had this huge forest in front of them with wild people in there, so they called it like the Silva Nigra, the wild jungle. Now you can see it's not a jungle anymore, but so the Black Forest is like in the southwest part of Germany, and we're from the north part of this region. Now our office is in Berlin, so we're kind of working on also in a landscape, traditional areas, but also in urban, in an urban context. And just to explain how maybe the mindset of the people in the Black Forest where we come from is they established a national park I think 15 years ago. You can see it on the left side, saying like the topic biodiversity wasn't really a topic people were talking about the last couple of 100 years. The people who live there were always allowed to use the forest, the resources of the forest for their own needs. So now there's national parks coming, say like, well, you can't enter this area because this is kind of reserved for biodiversity. The people in the Black Forest, they don't like it at all. So it's like, this is our forest. This is the material we always used. And then we're in the middle of discussion about how we use nature and resources now, where we like 10 billion people, so we have much more people. We have not enough resources, and this is where we come from. So my partner and I, we're well, I was a carpenter before, and my partner was a construction carpenter. So the wooden, the topic building with timber always was our, well, the stuff we wanted to do. But even if it seems like we have enough wood in the Black Forest, the common building material, let's say in the last 100 years, wasn't timber at all. We built with concrete and bricks and all stuff like that. And we try to get into the discussion like, well, look what you have in front of your house and look what are your traditions and how can we use and build in the future. So this is what we did like the last 15 years maybe, working with local craftsmen and the local material pretty closely to develop, well, let's say modern architecture based on locally traditional materials and, well, let's say construction ideas. And this is maybe a good example of building a small one-family house we built or we finished over 10 years ago. You can see like this the building tradition. Actually, we just saw some traditional buildings from the other side of the planet. From my point of view, we in the north of Black Forest we don't have like a big roof overhang because of the snow load in winter, so they're really short and we have a well developed tradition to build there, and this got to do with the climate and everything. And we try to transform these ideas into a new building, and so like we have this huge clay core in the middle of the building, and we have these shutters at the windows that you have to close by hand. This is not electric. We don't have it's not climatized, the building. We said like, okay, this is a really traditional idea to have this huge massive core in the middle of the building. This is warm in winter, this is cold in summer, and it controls the moisture within the building. And this is what was the idea. So this is kind of like a low-tech approach in a modern sense, maybe. And we can say it works perfectly. You know, it's a really simple construction, but we can see that the climate indoors just works in summer and in winter, and the family is pretty happy. So working with these ideas is something that always kept us busy, saying like how can we appreciate the value of the resources we find. And in this example, this is an ongoing project at the moment. This is an old building out of the 18th century. This was, I mean, you can see it pretty rotten when we found it. And the idea was that like, okay, we do it with a rotten apple. We just cut off the rotten parts and keep the rest of it. And if you look right on top of it, I think it's a really important detail for us when we talk about recycling and reusing materials. In old wooden construction in the Black Forest, or I think in every part of the world, we can see with these holes in the beams that this beam before was in a different building. So this is a reused material. And even if we have lots of forests in the Black Forest, the architecture developed out of in a sense of shortage. It was really difficult to get a new tree or cut a new tree and make a beam out of it. It was easier just to take a beam we found in the building next door and just reuse it. So the ideas we're talking now about they're pretty old actually, and the idea how we can use or manage our resources we can find like in the last hundreds of years, and we have to adapt them. What we do here, like we only change the beams that are really rotten and connect them with new wood. And I think this is what we did in the Black Forest. Was always part of this discussion. How do we work? What can we make? You know, we need the craftsmen and their knowledge, but on the other side, it's like we're coming with, well, our design ideas, and so like we just looking at how we've done it the last 100 years doesn't have to be the solution for the future. So let's challenge and push these old ideas and look what we can do out of it. And we realized that like there was always a really interesting and constructive way of working with this craftsman all together. So to sensitize for local traditions, materials, and potentials is a really interesting one. So this is this platform is, I think, one result of it. So like this is what we're actually talking about. And now when I do like this jump into, let's say, in an urban scale, said like how do we have to develop architecture nowadays? Of course, ecological, circular, but also social. This is a discussion we have in Germany. Like, well, if it is sustainable, it's too expensive, and then it can't be social. And this is a conflict that we have to work on. So like, is everything, both should be possible. And of course, I mean, when we talk about resources and climate change now, we're having, even if we work really local, we're discussing global questions. Now, like, well, we started like right from the kitchen table. Maybe now we're about 40 people working from Berlin with this topics. And as I just said, like the main challenges is for us climate change and resource shortage, and they are connected. You know, I mean, if we use a resource, we produce CO2 or we imitate CO2, and so the climate change and how we use resources, they're kind of like really connected. And so when we talk about like architecture in the northern of Europe, where the cities have already been built, actually, so we have like this building stock or this anthropogenic storage, actually, which is already there. These are resources we have to work with, and what we try to do is like if we take like this primary resources, they should be renewable. And how can we develop architecture out of both? So the project has changed completely in this urban context. And but the questions are, well, not always the same, but maybe with other, they're always there, like the material, the CO2 emissions, but also these social questions and how many resources do we use or do we need to live? And so this is something we discuss in a project. And now when I come to these high-rise buildings, actually project we're working on for 9 years now, and we try. It was part of the debate. How can we build with the renewable resources also in a high-rise building? Just to say, if we can manage to do it in this really extreme typology, then we don't have to discuss about it in all the other typologies anymore. Because if we can manage to do it there, then we can do it everywhere. That was our idea. But it was difficult to convince people to follow us, actually. Now we have an investor doing it. We will start the building site just as started, but there was a lot of research, a lot of discussion. and a lot of economic crisis in Germany as well. So it was a bit difficult to get it to this point. But we tried to develop, if we say like this is not just a timber high-rise, which is maybe complicated enough with the building laws we have in Germany, we say like, well, it has to be circular. We have to prevent the resources for future generations. And what does this mean for this high-rise building? We started to develop a really, well, let's say simple construction. This based on modular principles. And as you can see on the right side, sorry, there's these blue parts. We call it intended breaking points. How can we plan the future transformation of the building right now, even if we don't know how this building is going to be used in 20, 50, 100 years? These are like possible doors to enter the flats, but we don't need all these doors right now. But if we have a concrete core, which we need for fire protection, then we don't want to cut into this concrete wall in 50 years. And that's why we build all these possible doors right now, and we close them with bricks to give this building like a future transformation. And in this part, you can see it on the left side, we have like we have doors we need, of course, but we close doors we don't need with this intended breaking points for the future, and develop like a pretty flexible construction in the first row, even if we don't know what's going to happen in like 50 years. And parallel to this project, we started a research project with the Deutsche Bundesstiftung Umwelt. Like this is we're getting money from the state to develop and do the research and to do this research and how far can we go. Actually, we won't manage to realize everything we have in mind, but we try to develop like this research project parallel to the realization project with the same actors, like the planners. There's some of them are the same. There are intersections between the research project and the realization project, and we try to get as much as possible from this research project into the realization. So there's like LCA calculations going on. There's also BIM planning discussions we have, and we do the research of this mock-up with a technical university in Berlin with a natural building lab, and said like, okay, let's build. Well, the first idea was let's just build some building corners. This is part of the building project, but we said, well, come on, let's just build a part of this building. So we cut out part of this realization project. You can see it here. This is like the 12th floor, and said like we cut out part of this building and we built it in the laboratory with renewable resources as close to reality as possible. And this is something we developed parallel. You can see it here on the left side. So this is the main construction. This is actually the construction we will have in reality as well. You can see here also this gap between the beams is also intended breaking a point of this building in the future, where we can say like we separate this building in the future at this point. You can imagine high-rise building. We have like big fire protection questions we have to handle, and a lot of things there has to be solved within this construction, even if it's a simple one in the first row. But if you go into 12 stories, like 40 meters high, and we have this maybe a bit more complicated building laws in Germany, so this doesn't make it easier. But we try to do that, and talked about all these connections to make it possible to deassemble these resources in the future. The primary structure, so all these connections were special or different. The way of how we connect them, you can see them working in the laboratory here, and what you can see here on the left side down there, this is the clay we have on the building site, on the original building site. We just took it out and we put it back into this building. So all these discussions are going on, and we presented it in summer in the Schloss Bellevue. It's like a fair trade for sustainable projects, and presented it. The team was really proud that it was possible, and now this is what we're doing now, is take it apart. So this is the disassembled mock-up again, and these are the resources we get back. This is like the floor construction you can see here. We can use them for the next building. So this is the idea of this high-rise building, to preserve these resources for the future. Whatever gonna happen, we don't know that, but we try to make it possible to keep all these resources in the circle. Yeah, so that was my part.
Great, thank you very much, Jörg, for that really fascinating presentation. And I think the layerings of the intention to sustain local craftsmanship, at the same time tackling the question of limitation of resource, the fact that building practices has to start facing the question of ecological impact of construction industry. I think that's makes it even more complex challenge for all of us. I'm sure there'll be questions for your presentation later on, and I just want to remind the audience that you're welcome to start writing your questions in the chat section. And now I would like to introduce our final speaker, Professor Johannes Widodo. His presentation is titled Local Wisdom and Contemporary Architecture. Pak Johannes, yeah. Dr. Johannes Widodo is professor at the National University of Singapore, Department of Architecture, MA Architecture Conservation Program. He's an associate member of the Singapore Institute of Architects, SIA, founding executive of MAN, Modern Asian Architecture Network, founding director of INTA, International Network of Tropical Architecture, executive committee member of the Asian Academy for Heritage Management, and jury member for UNESCO Asia Pacific Awards for Cultural Heritage Conservation, voting member of ICOMOS International Scientific Committee, founding directors of ICOMOS National Committee of Singapore and Indonesia, founding director of Docomomo Macau and founder of Docomomo Singapore, co-founder and executive board member of Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance platform since 2019. How do you manage all that, Pak Jo? And the list is still continue. He served as he is a member of the alumni Catholic University Leuven Regional Council Southeast Asia since 2020, and he served as an advisory board member of the Preservation of Sites and Monuments of the National Heritage Board of Singapore. Welcome, Pak Johannes.
So thank you, Mandy. Well, being the last speaker, I think is the most difficult part because I need to be brief, but also I need to also connect with the other speakers. Well, Mahatmanto start by talking about craftsmanships. We are talking about Mangunwijaya craftsmanships, and Ranon talking about the local cultural vernacular wisdom. Then Tuan we heard about this continuity, modernity, and the integrations between the old and the new. Camille talking about social justice, and Jock just now about environmental sustainability. I think all these important ingredients, this aspect, is somehow very much related to what we learned from Mangunwijaya. I just want to reinforce that by connecting to the contemporary issue of climate change and climate actions, and also our situation right now. I'll start with this. Learning from the colonialism in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, at the beginning is always adaptations. For example, like the house in Batavia, is transplantations of a four-season typology from Holland to Jakarta, hot, dry climate. And of course, the architect manifestation is very much like in the West. But slowly, if you look into the few generations later, verandas start to appear. And then this veranda, the roof is become like a breathing roof. And if you look into, say, for example, the monsoon facade in Yangon in Myanmar, you can see that the cross ventilations, the passive systems helps to cool down the environment within the house. So this is a kind of adaptations that human have this capacity to adapt into a different environment. And then architecture follow that. So I think these notions of form follow functions, if we really relearn our concepts, especially from Mangunwijaya as well, actually architecture follow environment, architecture follow climates. Then also learning from Mangunwijaya, I believe that this is also a lessons that we learn from our environmental wisdom, from our ancestors. This is the shop house in Hoi An. And you know, Hoi An, central Vietnam, is flooded every year. So we don't try to resist nature. We are dancing with nature. Our nature in Asia here is, well, this intangible power of dealing with flood, having fun with flood. Like in Thailand, for example, the notion of Sanuk. Just take it easy. Nature will not be our enemy. Nature is our friends. So in this typology, as you can see, the building, the altar that used to be on the ground floor in different areas was moved to the second floor. And when the flood coming, they just open the gate and let the flood water flow into the house from the front to the back. When the market is flooded, it's just simply take the boat and just go shopping as usual. To entertain children during these 3 months of flood, they are very boring. They develop in southern Vietnam and also Mekong Delta an art puppet, water puppet show. So Uncle Ho Chi Minh, after the revolutions, even take all this folk culture in equal level as the Paris Opera and build a special water puppet show opera in Hanoi. So this is a kind of attitude, mentality of resilience. And this relation is really not by challenging nature, but by dancing with nature. In the modern era, for example, like in the townhouse and Singapore improvement task floods, that is part of the first urban regenerations done in the 1930s in Singapore. Also show development of typology, the typology of the passive design, stack effect, by enhancement of the stack effect by adding jack roof, by employing a louvered window, and also by moving the toilet from the front to the back for the reason of hygiene, by extending the party wall higher than the roof to prevent fire spreading from one block to another, is a modern interventions, a further development of the typology. So the passive ventilation strategy that I've seen in the Mangunwijaya works is continuation of the vernacular traditions. This is the cheapest way, the most circular way, a net zero energy way of dealing with environment, but at the same time also to provide comfort, safety, and also wellness to the people inside the house with less energy. You know, the energy price is going up very high now because of the war, because of the shortage of productions, and because of all the reasons. And of course, the most rational things in the building industry and architecture is to reduce the energy usage. And the only way to use that, to reduce the energy usage, to reduce the cost, is by coming back into the ventilations, into the so-called the passive architecture system. And science has been proven this, right? For example, the typology of the shop house with a covered courtyard compared with the open courtyard has a very different climatic performance. And this climatic performance directly translated into cost, into money and saving. We have at NUS concept shop house. And this concept shop house is called Baba House. It's become like a museums. Still employ all this old system of cooling the buildings. As you can see aesthetically, how the wind can blow through the central wall, central door, how the courtyard still functioning to cool down because of the stack effect. But at the same time also, the city is getting hotter because of the pollutions, because of the heat island effect. So, and also the lifestyle change. We cannot avoid to use electricity. And one way to increase the electricity, to increase the building performance, to give more comfort of people, to bring down the outside temperature from 32 degrees, 25 degrees centigrade into the comfort zone, 25 degrees centigrade, we need to use air conditioning. So air conditioning is become part and parcel of people who live in the tropics. So we need electricity. Therefore, there's an idea to implement solar panel. But again, solar panel is also a curse because solar panel is not sustainable. The maximum age of solar panel is about 20, 25 years. And the cost to recycle solar panel is still very expensive. The economic of scale is not there yet. We need to wait maybe for another generation to make solar panel more sustainable and cheaper. But at the same time, we also need a cheap production of electricity. So one way to moderate this is by innovations. And this innovation, for example, by creating a Peranakan motif solar panel that can be installed vertically, not horizontally, on the back lanes to replace the glass on the windows and so on. And this experiment has been carried out in one of our NUS shop houses in Singapore. And it may bring down the cost of energy by 60%. And that is a lot, and consider the keep increasing solar panel. And if looking into the innovation, the future innovation of the vernacular materials and combinations of solar panel, this is one application that is quite interesting. Pictures of a solar panel used in Pompeii, and that is the form and also the colors look like terracotta. So when you put this on the roof, mixed with the original solar roof on the ancient site, you don't feel that they don't look like alien elements. But at the same time, also you are able to produce electricity. And when the solar panel is dead, they cannot produce electricity anymore, then at least you can still see this as integrated part of the aesthetics of the area. So innovations and technology can be combined directly with the so-called the vernacular looks and vernacular aesthetics. WOHA, one of the famous firm in Singapore, even use a monsoon window system in the high-rise building. They ensure cross ventilations with a very thin building profile, so you can ensure the fair wind can cross from left to right easily. Then there is a stack effect between the gaps and the inner courtyard between these two blocks. At the same time, also you can control the speed of the wind without necessarily worry about the water coming into the house, and you can also control the speed of the wind. And this helps to create a kind of hybrid system within the building. Our examples of SDE4 buildings at NUS is the first net zero energy building in Singapore, but at the same time also the well-certified cool, the first in Asia, that measure the building performance, not based on the green mark only, but also the human factors. How human who use this building, it's not just feel healthier, but also the fitness rate is increased, and there is a change of mindset that the six stories building doesn't need to have an elevator. The elevator was all hidden. We designed a sexy staircases. So we encourage people to use staircase rather than just simply push the button. And this building employ a very simple vernacular concept. Architecture 101, facing south, projected roof, block east and west with 2 wind tunnels, and then create a porous wall so the wind can help to cool down the exterior, and then use double glass. And this double glass is to bring in to maximize the natural lighting, and at the same time also bring you a very good quality of isolations for temperature outside and inside, and also very good acoustic with a higher fire rating. So all these modern interventions and innovations can be resulted in a very aesthetical way, and not just aesthetic, but also in terms of climatic performance, it's become a building that can be operated using a passive system, vernacular system, local wisdom, retranslations of the stilt house, of a kampung house. The roof is big. So on that roof, we use solar panel, but the amount of solar panels is reduced as much as we can, because we understand that solar panel is not sustainable. But with that limited solar panel, then the usage of energy within the building should be reduced. So after 1 or 2 years operations, the calculations say that actually this building produces more electricity, because the students and the occupants use less lift and the less moments to turn on the air conditioning or turn on the light. And the most important thing is the water is also being recycled to flush toilet, to make the water for irrigations, for sprinkler, and all drops of water was absorbed on the ground. So in the operation of this building in the last 5 years, we never pay electrical bill, we never pay water bill. Everything can be sustained by itself. And second, the occupants of the building become healthier. Why? Because they used to step up using the staircase. When they don't move in the table, the studio table, the electricity will be switched off, the lamp will be switched off. So they have to keep moving. So the building become a teacher. The building become a pedagogy. So it's not form follow functions, but functions follow form. So this form will force the people to exercise, will force the people to change the mindset and the behavior. So in the urban context, the greening of Singapore, for example, is one good example of how to bring down the temperature through the rewilding the entire city by 3 or 4 degrees centigrade. When the city is become cooler, then you can have cross ventilations more effective in the buildings. Incentive works. It's not just an effort for individual buildings. In order to fight climate change, in order to generate impact, you need the state party to also to use taxpayer money to give incentive to the someone or any old building owner who can do the best. This is one example of scheme, the landscaping for urban space and high rises. If they say Singapore is considered as a nature, then somebody builds something on a site, it means that you take out from nature. So you have to pay back by giving back through a better carbon neutral building, low energy building, or even better positive energy building, and add more green factor. If you can do that, then you are doing a good job. If you can do more than that, the government can give incentives. The other incentive, for example, from building authority here, is green mark incentive scheme for existing building. If you keep the embodied carbon in the modern building, for example, then you make that building achieve the green mark platinum, then the government will pay you $600,000. If you can achieve super low energy green mark platinum, then the government will give you 900,000 incentive. If you can achieve green mark zero energy, the government will give you $1.2 million to offset. So this is a very important principle that the state has a very big responsibility to have a green plan, to have a KPI. And this KPI should be beneficial to everyone. Another incentive from ramparts, for example, Skyrise Greenery Incentive Scheme. The Skyrise Greenery Incentive Scheme provided funding 50% of installation costs of rooftop greenery and physical greeneries. And this helps to create this kind of new types of urban architecture and urbanisms. For example, the Capita Spring building, they give access to public to the floor, middle floor, and top floor of the building at a certain time. So it's not just about adding a green space, but also public space, social space in very high-rise, high-density situations. This is an innovation in terms of privately owned public space. The space might be, the building might be private, but certain part of the building, not just the ground floor, even middle floor and top floor can be dedicated for public use. And I think this is a kind of innovations beyond just talking about vernacular architecture or using the vernacular language. It could be something that is totally new, something that is fit into the present and future situations, but at the same time also still using the same DNA, the same concept and philosophy. And this is the pictures of the green oasis at 11, 12, and 20 inside the building. It provides a breathing space for the very dense populations. This is an office building, but half day from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is open for public use.
2 more
This is
minutes.
my last slide. This is, not last slide, there's 2 more slides. This is my favorite examples that you don't need to have a very high profile project. This is simply a campus in Semarang, University of 17 August in Semarang. There is an abandoned or unused, unutilized courtyard. And when I visit that place, I said, can you turn it into a very interesting social space by just creating a small amphitheater? So this, they work together, the alumni coming, work together with the lecturer to transform this within 6 months into a very nice social space that can be also used for lecture. So the students like this space so much, they prefer to do lecture outside, and by doing lecture outside, they can turn off the air conditioning, they can turn off the electricity, and they can save money. And by not just saving money, they can ask the university to give the money to them so they can go traveling and see the world. So you must teach the students how to walk the talk. And the climate action starts from a very simple and very rational steps. And this is my last statement here, that I have these 5 principles of contemporary and future architecture. And these principles, actually, I learned from Mangunwijaya. Number 1, when you're doing architecture, number 1, we have to start from environmental sustainability. As we are dealing with global issue, the most important is to save the biosphere, save the atmosphere, save the earth, save life. Second is economic viability. No money, no honey. I always say that. If something is not economically viable, it's draining the reserve, we cannot save anything. We cannot build anything. Then social equity and social justice. Even if the building is a private, but it doesn't mean that you can do anything that you want, because the presence of the building creates a social impact. Then cultural authenticity. Be true to our own culture. Think about local wisdom. Think about what the ancestors have taught us. There is a wisdom in stilt house, in monsoon windows, that can be translated into contemporary and futuristic architecture. And then finally is architectural integrity. As an architect, we can design anew, do adaptive reuse, but design have to be integrated, have to be sustainable, have to be done as good as possible, as a structurally sound. So I think the best impact to me in terms of Mangunwijaya was these two books. Pasal-pasal Penghantar Fisika Bangunan, The Introduction of Building Physics, published in the 70s. Then Wastu Citra, another book about philosophy. One is about the building science, and second is about the building philosophy. And these two books is very fundamental in shaping my thought until now, that enabled me to say about these 5 principles of architecture. And then if you look into the books that is being available now, this should become the first books that read by all undergrad students in architecture, and also for master and PhD students. Because from here, the true spirit of climate actions is translated into real things that may be able to stop all this nonsense about this global warming. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Johannes Widodo. Thank you also for helping me wrapping up and kind of summarizing this fascinating topic that we've been learning in this symposium. As we now entering the discussion section, I would like to invite all the speakers to join me. I think there is one question from Camille. So let me just wait until everyone's back on. We have Pak Mahatmanto, Ranon, Camille, Jörg is here. All right, okay, we have everyone. Okay, Camille, why don't you ask your question directly?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. It's a question, actually, question for you. Sorry, I'll mix up. I thought you typed in the question there. Question from Sally for you. How do we manage to make Mangunwijaya's approach the norm? You know, the fact that, you know, his work continued to inspire many contemporary architects in Indonesia, and as we learned from this forum, perhaps beyond Indonesia.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the question. Yeah, it's the more I reflect upon the way architects practice, for example, I think there has to be different modes of practice as architects, not just the way that I suppose we have come accustomed to, you know. That comes with it, the methodologies, the flows, you know, all this stuff. In my personal practice at Paul, we also do a lot of commercial works, private works, and so on and so forth. But and also Mangunwijaya does not only specifically build, his only work is not just in Kalichode or, you know, specifically with people in terms of advocacy work, but also in a larger, broader architectural practice. So if we're talking about the kind of practice that would compel you to deal with working with people in I suppose a difficult social context, difficult political context, I think I would argue that we should allow the kind of practice that would give you plenty of time to think and to reflect and to group and regroup and because it is the question of time, I think, that is very the strong component that we have to consider when we're working at that kind of scale and also complexity. So I think that's one thing I learned from Mangunwijaya. And just to add very briefly, secondly, is that you have to involve non-architects and a lot of other disciplines, not just adjacent disciplines like structure or the MEPs or plumbing, but also the larger disciplines that would help you look at these matters on a technical level, but also on a bird eye view kind of level, on a conceptual level, on a theoretical level, because that allows you to reflect upon what you do and gives you some kind of direction, I guess, even if it's vague. I was very much helped by having anthropologists come and help us during this process, because that really helped me find the conceptual frameworks on how we do things.
Yeah, great. And if there is anyone from the audience who would like to ask questions directly to one of our speakers or provide a general feedback, you're welcome to raise your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sally.
Yeah. I'm asking myself, all these wonderful projects, are there the architects in this case a kind of sponsors for the projects, because they need so much time and work, and do you have to, Camille just said something like this, you have to refinance your work on these projects with other ones which are quite more normal?
I think if I take your question even further, like how do you architects would ask, how do you make money out of working on projects like this? The truth is, from my experience at Kunir, we didn't make money out of the process with the communities, but the money is made as a project once the building was into the process of actual designing and the building, right? I would hope that it could be different in other countries or cities. But also at the same time, parallel to what we did was that we tried to work with the city government to actually turn this into some sort of policy or some sort of policy that would have this not just done by people who want to do it, but this becomes like a part of a structure of the way city would improve the livelihood in this kind of settlements, so that there could be some money involved to pay people to do this.
And maybe if I can invite Rannon and Jörg as well to answer that question, all the projects that you've shown today is time intensive. How do you manage that happen?
Sure.
Okay, Jörg, maybe you can start, and then after that, Rannon.
Sally asked if we have to co-finance with other projects. Our approach, my answer would be yes, because the problem more is that it's really difficult for us to do normal projects. We find ourselves always into a new project. It's like, well, this is like a pioneer project for us as the client. It's like, oh, and I say, oh no, another one. And I see ourselves finding in the same, problem again. Of course, this is something that really drives us. We have a really broad approach and try to, we just saw it in the last contribution from Johannes. Like we talk about climate, energy. We try to have an integrated system of architecture. So it's not only about road resources, but that makes it really complex. And we have to discuss a lot. And of course, like the people, the social aspect is also really important. And this is another thing we have to work on. Is also and no one pays that actually. We get paid for an ordinary building. And if we say like, well, we have another approach and no one pays it, that's the truth, I think. Yeah. On the other side is this is what drives us. And if I look into our office and said, like, do you want to make an ordinary project like that doesn't reach maybe the 1.5 degree goal? Everyone would say, like, no, we don't. No, we wanna be part of the solution and not a part of the problem.
Great, thanks. Ranun?
Yeah, and for Yangna Studio projects, actually that the financial problem about the money is not the biggest deal that we face. Yeah, it's the normal problem that we face, but it's like we like our we mostly specialize in like woodwork and what we are doing. So the clients that come to us, they know what they are paying for and what they are doing. So like sometimes the work it includes like an improvisation. The cost can be like more or less, and but most of them are willing to pay, and we can it's not just come from just one our side, but like also from the clients too, that they are willing to do some like experimentation for us to like be more sustainable, or like to pay for more than to the craftsmanship. So they know what they are doing, and they know that they will pay the money that they pay. It's local materials, but what we are paying for mostly is for people, for craftsmanship. Yeah. And so that's not the biggest problem that we facing. Yep.
Great. I can see Pak Johannes Widodo has a question.
No, it's not question. It's just continue about this money things, because it's not just about the, yes, cost sometimes is very expensive, but incentive is important. I mean, the state party, the government have to give incentive. And also nowadays, carbon is money. The embodied carbon, the zero energy can be translated directly into money. So I think it's not just about to convince the building owner, to convince the clients that actually it's better to preserve the old structure. It's better preserve to use vernacular passive system and make them believe in that. And then, of course, they will to spend. And then if the government is very supportive, for example, through the incentive like additional GFA, like bonus, like tax holiday, this could be very helpful in pushing the discourse in sustainable architecture.
And I think, as an educator and academic, we need to bring to the front, this type of engagement, designing for and with community, tackling this really challenging social problem, and to not isolate future students and future architects from the hard questions about why do we build, for whom do we build, and for what outcomes. And I think the danger is the tendency to isolate design skill from these difficult challenges.
So basically you start from ethics, right? Mangunwijaya teaches us about the ethics is the basic. Environmental social ethics, which is lost sometimes from the curriculum and the profession.
Exactly. Yeah, and how aesthetic is an outcome of this rigorous interrogation of a myriad of constraint. It's not an aesthetic for aesthetic's sake. And I think, Moritz, you raised your hand earlier. Would you like to ask your question directly?
No, because it is already answered, or it was already answered. But I have another question, and picking up Jörg's or quoting Jörg, who said, "If we can do it here, we can do it everywhere." My question goes to our colleagues in Indonesia, Singapore, and and for sure Thailand, which are involved in construction of new buildings. And I would like to ask if there are any efforts to design high-rise timber buildings in your region.
Is that a question or just a summary, Moritz?
No, that's a question. If there are any efforts to sorry, maybe I was not clear enough. My question is to you on the other side of the planet. If there are any efforts to build timber high-rise buildings or large-scale buildings in your part of the world.
Yeah, in Singapore, we have it already.
You
We
have it.
have one in NTU, right? The high bay, all 100% wood, the Gaia. It's possible. Inside the NTU campus, the School of Economics. It's designed by Toyo Ito. It just finished about 2 or 3 years ago. But now they have new problems. Mold. It's mold. And because it's not fit into the tropical climates. And maybe everything is imported. It's fit for the Four Seasons country. But I think my colleagues, Shinya Okuda from Japan, is experimenting with using scrap wood from Borneo, Sumatra, from different places in Southeast Asia, to use it as a laminated wood for the high-rise and big span building. So the research is still ongoing. And you remember Markland Pond? They can build this parabolic inverted Gothic structure in ITB, Bandung, and also in Posarang Church. This is a good examples that the ideas picked up by Frei Otto in Delft and become the tensile structure in Germany. This is talking about the universal issue of innovations and using a very rational way of thinking. So it's not as York is correct. If this can be done in Posarang, in Majapahit, and in Bandung, it can be done in Munich, right? If it can be done in Germany, it should be able to be done elsewhere. And I believe there's a lot of innovations in terms of modern architectural innovations that has been going on since 1930s onward in this region.
I think if I may continue that
Yes.
line of thought. To your question, Moritz, about the high rises, a lot of public buildings now, apartments, subsidized apartments, for example, in Jakarta, there are at least 20 stories high. Some are 25 stories high. So the motive by the state is to overcome this problem of housing backlogs, right? So it's about this production of as many units as possible in a small plot of land as possible. And I think there is that there is also the other side of the argument that, hold on, what is it that we're trying to achieve here? Because when we try to put it in the context of land ownership, for example, in Jakarta, half of the Jakarta is actually owned land-wise by just a small number of corporations. So you have like this sort of imbalance in actual usage and ownership. And I think there are some studies that look into the possibility of simply having it up to 4 stories or 5 stories in major cities like in Jakarta would be actually sufficient to house people living there. But also, to your point, there was a very interesting point about timber use, and I saw on Ranon's presentation of using bamboos, which is absolutely wonderful. Bamboos is something that is easy to learn, but very difficult to master. But one thing with this kind of materials, actually, this organic materials such as bamboo, is that they actually lend you to a situation where you can work, you can use those materials to have people to work with you. So those are excuses to invite people to work with you to build something together, and to learn how to, for example, how to preserve them, like bamboos, how to cut them, and all this sort of stuff, right? And bamboos is a particularly fitting example in Southeast Asia because it is very much well grown here. So, for example, it's very traditional. You don't have to know when to cut them. You have to know when and how to preserve them traditionally, for example. But yeah, those kind of knowledge is dissipating. It's getting mysteriously gone. So I don't know what happened to those knowledge. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think projects that I'm just mindful of the time, and I think many projects showcased today is part of those documentation and dissemination of the way we can continue to utilize these building materials and coming up with a new capacity to build. Now I'm just conscious of the time, and I need to wrap it up soon. I think there is questions raised, and Pak Johannes already answered the question directly. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to read one comment from Pauline van Roosmalen. Thank you to all presenters for sharing very inspiring, beautiful, and constructive thoughts and project. To wrap it up, I'm not going to repeat the amazing reflections presented by our speakers, but I think what is unique about this symposium is to kind of experience this cross-cultural conversation and border-crossing dialogues. And for me, it's very fitting for Mangunwijaya's legacy to trigger this conversation between places, given that he was a border crossing individual, and he layered multiple intellectual capacities, and he moved places, and I think it is something that we need to remind ourselves that we are much more connected and I guess and dependent on one another, and I think knowledge is produced through that conversation. And I think I would like to thank you, the curatorial team, to facilitate this fascinating conversation. I just want to kind of highlight forthcoming events organized by the curatorial team. One is the release of the video on Mangunwijaya's architectural work in Yogyakarta by Avianti and Setiadi. It will happen quite shortly. Watch that space. I'm sure it will be communicated through Instagram account, and you'll find it out sooner than later. And there will be an opening of the exhibition of Diplom in Architect Indonesian German Architecture History in Berlin on the 20th November. And all the curatorial partners from Indonesia will be there at the event. I would like again to thank you all the speakers for their generosity and inspiring reflection. Thank you for the audience for your engagement, and I hope this has been an enjoyable symposium for everyone. Thank you.